The Rose Garden at the White House on January 15, 2026, is sharp and sunny at exactly 11:00 a.m. The temperature hovers around 30 degrees Fahrenheit, creating perfect weather for the events about to unfold. The skies are clear and the air is crisp, making it the kind of January day in Washington that renders everything distinct. There are no clouds or haze to obscure the view, just absolute clarity. President Donald Trump stands at the podium with the presidential seal gleaming gold in the winter sunlight. He is wearing a perfectly tailored blue suit, likely a Brioni, paired with a red power tie that signals his authority. An American flag pin sits slightly crooked on his lapel, but he is too busy winning to care about such details. He wears that confident smile, the one implying he knows secrets you do not, which has terrified his opponents for 50 years. Behind him stands the West Wing with its white columns and classical architecture representing American power. It is the symbol of the most powerful office on earth, and cameras are positioned everywhere. There are dozens of cameras, far more than usual, with every major network represented. CNN has sent 3 full crews, including anchors and producers, while Fox News has 5 teams present. They knew this event would be significant, so MSNBC sent their entire White House team. Even Al Jazeera, the BBC, Reuters, and the Associated Press are here to cover this worldwide breaking news. All the White House correspondents received the alert 90 minutes ago via a short message on official letterhead. The message announced a major press conference at 11:00 regarding the Operation Clean Plate fraud investigation. It noted that Representative Ilhan Omar would attend in her capacity as the Minnesota representative. That last line caught everyone's attention immediately, as Omar voluntarily attending a Trump press conference is highly unusual. Representative Ilhan Omar stands off to the side regarding the stage, about 15 feet from Trump's podium. She is close enough to be in the frame, hear everything, and ultimately be humiliated. She is the Democrat from Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, a member of the Squad, and a progressive icon. As the first Somali American elected to Congress and the first Muslim woman to wear a hijab in the House, she is a historic figure. Today, she wears a navy blue hijab and a somber dark pantsuit while trying to look confident. She attempts to look strong, but is failing, as her hands are clasped too tightly in front of her. Her knuckles are slightly white, betraying the tension she feels after being invited here as Minnesota's representative. She was told this was a press conference about federal fraud and a bipartisan show of concern. It was presented as a standard White House photo opportunity where she would stand beside Trump and look concerned. She planned to give a statement defending her community and pushing back against attacks on Somali immigrants. She hoped to call for due process and fairness while getting some good clips for social media. She has absolutely no idea what is about to happen as the press corps sits in neat rows. 80 reporters fill the seats, with the front 3 rows occupied by big names from major networks and national newspapers. Political blogs and new media are present alongside old media, with notepads out and digital recorders ready. Smartphones are prepared and cameras are hot with red lights glowing, indicating this is going out live. Every network is carrying the broadcast, including YouTube live streams, Facebook Live, and Twitter streams. Millions are watching already, and that number will rise to tens of millions within the hour. Trump steps to the microphone and adjusts it down slightly, as at 6'3", the microphone is always set too high. He uses that familiar gesture and a showman's pause, having done this thousands of times at rallies and debates. He knows how to work a camera and build suspense, letting the anticipation grow in the room. He lets them wonder what he will say as the tension builds, then thanks everyone for being there. His voice carries strong and clear with that unmistakable New York accent. He comments that it is a beautiful day, cold but beautiful, and notes that he loves days with such clarity. He says that today is about clarity, truth, and facts. As he looks around the room, he makes eye contact with individual reporters, knowing most by name and which networks they work for. He knows their biases and who hates him, nodding at the Fox News team with a slight smile. When he looks at CNN, the smile disappears, and they look down unable to meet his eyes. He announces Operation Clean Plate, describing it as a major federal investigation involving multiple agencies. The FBI, IRS, Treasury, and Justice Department are all working together on this massive inquiry. It is the biggest investigation in American history into welfare, child nutrition, and pandemic fraud. This fraud is happening right now in Minnesota and has been happening for years under everyone's noses. $1 billion has been stolen, a figure that includes a billion with a B. Nobody knows the full extent yet, but investigators say it could be even higher. Perhaps $2 billion. It was stolen from American children, from hungry kids who needed food, and from hard-working taxpayers. It was stolen from you and your family, and from every American who pays their taxes honestly. He pauses to let that number sink in and breathe, emphasizing $1 billion is 1,000 million. The cameras zoom in on his face, which is now serious, and displaying his presidential commander-in-chief persona. This is not Rally Trump, but President Trump, stating he invited Congresswoman Ilhan Omar here today. He gestures to her with his left hand, and she manages a tight, forced, and uncomfortable smile. The cameras immediately pan to her, zooming in with high-definition 4K lenses to capture every micro-expression. She represents Minnesota's 5th District and the surrounding areas where most of this fraud occurred. This is where criminals set up fake food sites and fraudsters created shell companies. People claimed to feed children who didn't exist, causing hundreds of millions of dollars to disappear. Children went hungry, while criminals bought mansions, luxury cars like BMWs and jewelry. They traveled to Dubai on taxpayer money, and Trump's voice hardens slightly as he continues. He states that she sponsored the legislation that enabled this fraud and made it possible. It was the Meals Act of 2020, her bill with her name on it as the first sponsor. Her legislation weakened oversight on federal child nutrition programs and made it easier to claim reimbursements. It reduced audits and removed safeguards, and at this mention, Omar's smile completely disappears. It falters just for a second, but the cameras catch it from every angle. Her lawyer standing behind her just out of frame tenses up as his shoulders go rigid. This was not the plan, nor what they discussed with the White House Chief of Staff 3 days ago. This was supposed to be a standard announcement, with a statement from Trump and a statement from Omar. It was meant to be about due process and not blaming entire communities, followed by standard questions. This is not normal or standard procedure. It is something else entirely. Trump continues in a casual, conversational voice, saying he thought he should ask her some questions. Before the official announcement or her prepared statement, he wants to ask presidential questions. These are important questions that need answers, questions that the American people deserve to have answered. These questions have been ignored for too long because the media is too busy protecting her. He looks directly at the press corps and specifically at CNN's chief White House correspondent. She shifts in her seat uncomfortably as he calls out their bias and refusal to ask hard questions. He is doing this on live television in front of millions, and Omar's smile is completely gone. Her face is neutral as she tries not to show emotion or fear. But she is failing. Her hands are clasped tighter, and her knuckles are visibly white. Her lawyer behind her makes a small gesture, shaking his head to signal she should not engage. However, there is nothing to be done, as she is already in the rose garden on camera. Trump thanks Congresswoman Omar for being there in a friendly, almost warm voice. He tells her she didn't have to come and could have stayed in her office on Capitol Hill. She could have issued a written statement, sent an aide, or declined the invitation entirely. But she came and showed up, which he calls very brave and says he respects. He suggests they have a real conversation without talking points or prepared statements. He wants to talk about her Meals Act, the fraud it enabled, and the $1 billion that disappeared. He mentions her campaign official, who is now a convicted criminal sitting in federal prison. He brings up her mysterious millions that appeared from nowhere, and many other important things. He says all of these things are documented, proven, and ready for the American people to hear. Trump reaches under the podium and pulls out a very thick folder about 3 inches deep. It is organized with colored tabs sticking out the side: blue, red, yellow, green, purple, and orange. There are 6 tabs representing 6 sections and 6 scandals, each one color-coded. It is the kind of folder trial lawyers use when they are about to destroy someone on cross-examination. It is the kind of evidence that defense attorneys fear because it means someone is in serious trouble. CNN's chief correspondent turns to her producer and whispers urgently, asking if this is really happening. The producer nods, looking pale, and says they are live and cannot cut away because he is the president. Fox News cameras zoom tighter on the folder, recognizing this is pure television gold. Their viewers are going to love this, and their ratings will be astronomical. Trump taps the folder for emphasis and states he wants to be absolutely clear, so there is no confusion. He asserts he is the President of the United States and the Commander-in-Chief. He reminds her she is a guest at the People's House, the center of American power. He says he will ask important questions, and she will answer them honestly and completely. She must answer truthfully under the eyes of the American people, and then she can make her statement. He promises she will have a full and fair chance to defend herself and explain. He asks if that sounds fair, answering his own question by saying, "Of course it is." He claims to be a very fair person despite what people say, telling her to ask anyone who knows him. Omar opens her mouth and tries to speak to establish some ground rules or parameters. Trump holds up his hand in a friendly but firm manner, asserting absolute presidential authority. He tells her not yet, explaining that he asks the questions first because that is the protocol. The president asks questions first, then she answers, and then they move forward. He calls this simple, fair, democratic, and the American way. He asks his first question and instructs her to listen very carefully because it is extremely important. He calls this the foundation of everything else they are going to discuss today. He asks if she knew when she sponsored the Meals Act of 2020 that it would enable fraud. Specifically, did she know it would enable the largest child nutrition and welfare fraud in American history? He demands a simple yes or no answer to this question. The Rose Garden erupts with shock, gasps, and whispered reactions rather than questions. This is unprecedented, as the president is interrogating a sitting member of Congress on live television. CNN's correspondent audibly says, "Oh my God," which is picked up by her microphone and transmitted live. The Fox News team is barely containing their excitement with grins and nods, having waited for this moment. MSNBC looks absolutely stricken as their progressive darling is being publicly interrogated, There is nowhere to hide, as this is not a press conference, but an ambush and public execution. The entire world is watching, but no one can intervene or stop it. He is the president, and this is his house, his press conference, and his rules. He is asking legitimate questions about documented fraud that should have been asked years ago. Omar's jaw clenches. Her tension is visible, and she grinds her teeth, trying to control her fear. "Mr. President," she says, her voice tight and controlled by years of political training. She starts to say the fraud was committed by criminals and bad actors who exploited the program. Trump stops her firmly, his voice not angry but final, like someone who has been in charge his entire life. He tells her to stop right there, because that is not a yes or no answer. He calls it a deflection and a talking point prepared by her staff. He clarifies that he didn't ask about the criminals, good intentions, or the pandemic. He asked a simple question requiring a yes or no, so he offers to try again slowly. He asks if, at the time she wrote and sponsored the Meals Act, she knew criminals would use it. Did she know they would use it to steal $1 billion from American children? He tells her there are two options, and she must pick one. Omar tries a different approach, stating she cannot be held personally responsible for how criminals choose to act. Trump cuts her off decisively, interpreting her response as a no. He summarizes that she is claiming she didn't know her bill was badly written or lacked safeguards. He says if she didn't know criminals would use it, then that is good, and they are making progress. He states they now have her answer on record that she didn't know. This implies incompetence, meaning she wrote a bill so poorly thought out it enabled $1 billion in fraud. Or it is a lie, meaning she knew exactly what would happen and let it happen anyway. He suggests she might have let it happen because it benefited her community, or even her personally. He says they will figure out which one it is, because he has many investigators looking into it. The FBI, IRS, and Treasury Financial Crimes Division are all examining this very thoroughly. Trump flips open the folder to the first blue tab, which contains the fraud section. It is filled with dozens of pages of documents, reports, charts, and evidence all organized. He reads from a document about her campaign official and friend, a man named Ilhan Mariam. He worked on her multiple campaigns and attended many events and fundraisers with her. Trump notes they took many photos together, smiling and looking very friendly and close. He asks if she remembers him, and Omar nods barely, a movement almost imperceptible but caught by cameras. Trump says it is good she remembers because Ilhan has been convicted in federal court. He pleaded guilty to $3.2 million in fraud using a fake food site. He lied about feeding 5,000 children every single day, except the children and food didn't exist. Nothing existed except the federal taxpayer money he stole and spent on himself. He spent it on luxury goods and his lifestyle, and Trump asks if she knows where he is right now. He answers that he is in federal prison, where criminals belong. Trump looks up from the document and stares directly at Omar with a piercing gaze. He asks the most important question so far. Did she know he was stealing? Did she know her campaign official and friend was stealing from children? The cameras zoom in tight on Omar's face for an extreme close-up, as the color drains visibly. She goes from a healthy complexion to ash gray, the color of fear and guilt. Realization sets in that this isn't just about Minnesota fraud, but about her personal corruption. Trump has every piece of evidence, every document, witness, and transaction. This situation is career-ending and possibly prison-bad. Her voice shakes as she suggests they should follow proper procedure and allow law enforcement to handle it. Trump interrupts, almost cheerful and enjoying the big moment he lives for. He agrees entirely, saying that is exactly why he invited her and set up this conference. Millions of Americans are watching, possibly the highest-rated press conference in history. He demands she answer whether she knew the man in her campaign photos was stealing millions. There is complete silence in the Rose Garden for 20 seconds, broken only by camera shutters. Reporters shift in their seats and someone coughs, but the press corps doesn't know where to look. It is painful and awkward, like watching a car crash in slow motion. Even the CNN reporters look uncomfortable as their ideological ally is destroyed. Omar still hasn't answered because either answer destroys her. If she says yes, she covered for a criminal. If no, she is incompetent for not vetting her staff. Since both answers are terrible, she says nothing. Trump says they will put a pin in that and come back to it later. He mentions he has been extremely busy with investigators, researchers, and forensic accountants working around the clock. He has a team of constitutional and criminal lawyers who have found shocking things about her. They found information about her money, her husband, and how they both went from broke to multimillionaires. Trump spreads the folder fully open on the podium, revealing hundreds of pages. He outlines the plan to go through 6 major scandals systematically, one by one. He taps each colored tab representing a documented federal crime ready for prosecution. Behind the press corps, an MSNBC producer panics on the phone, unable to determine how to cover this. Trump continues, saying that after America sees the evidence, they can decide for themselves. They can decide if Omar is a victim of racism, as she claims, or a corrupt politician. They will judge if she is a traitor who puts Somalia over America and enriches herself. Omar looks at her lawyer with complete panic in her eyes, but he shakes his head frantically. There is nothing he can do as she stands on live television with the president. She made a catastrophic mistake coming here, and President Donald J. Trump knows it. He intends to make her pay publicly and devastatingly, starting with the numbers. Trump's voice shifts to become more serious, like a prosecutor building a case. He claims to be a numbers guy who built his career on balance sheets and profits. He states that numbers do not lie, unlike politicians who are professional liars. CNN's White House correspondent whispers urgently into her phone that he is actually interrogating her. She calls for legal teams and constitutional experts, but her producer says it is legal. Fox News cameras zoom in on the split screen, creating television gold that will be replayed for decades. Trump pulls a document from under the blue tab with a Department of Justice seal. He reads slowly, identifying the Meals Act introduced in April 2020 during the pandemic lockdowns. He notes she was the primary sponsor of the bill intended to ensure access to meals. The stated purpose was noble, helping hungry children, which no one could oppose. However, Trump looks up and states that is not what the bill actually did. Her bill massively weakened oversight and removed verification requirements for federal reimbursements. It essentially told people that if they claimed to feed children, the government would send money without questions. Trump pulls out a chart with red bars showing shocking numbers and holds it up. He explains how the nonprofit Feeding Our Future claimed to feed hundreds of thousands of children daily. They used the flexibility her bill created to claim millions of meals. The federal government sent them hundreds of millions of dollars based on these lies. Trump shakes his head, noting $250 million has been proven so far in court. Prosecutors think the total fraud could reach $1 billion or more, because the records were so poor. Trump expresses presidential indignation, revealing there was no food and no children. The sites were empty buildings, parking lots, and ghost kitchens. One address was a closed restaurant and another was a private house. Yet, money flowed to criminals. Trump waves off a reporter from Reuters, insisting he is not done yet. He shows a photo of Safari Restaurant in her district, which looks like a legitimate business. He explains the co-owner was convicted of wire fraud and money laundering involving $70 million. He then displays a video still of Omar at that restaurant in the summer of 2020. She is smiling, wearing an apron, and praising the program that was stealing from children. He lets the image sink in. Omar promoting a fraud site while the owner stole millions. Trump asks quietly if she knew the restaurant was part of a massive fraud scheme when she was there. Omar's voice shakes as she claims she attended many community events providing services. Trump rejects this as a deflection and demands a yes or no answer. He concludes she is either lying about knowing or was too incompetent to spot a $70 million fraud. He flips to another page, promising that it gets much worse. He brings up her campaign official again, showing a large photo of Omar and the man smiling together. He identifies him as the ground game coordinator who was essential to her operation. Trump reveals that while working on her campaign, this man ran a fake food site. He claimed to feed 5,000 children a day and stole $3.2 million from the government. The silence in the press corps is heavy as the implication lands. The man admitted everything and is now in federal prison. And Trump closes that section with a loud thud. He asks again how she could not know her own campaign official was a criminal. Omar's lawyer steps forward to intervene, but Trump points at him to step back. Omar visibly shakes as she states she returned the donations when she learned of the charges. Trump acknowledges the return of $7,400 but points out the math. She returned a tiny fraction of what he stole and only did so after he was indicted. She kept his support for years while he was stealing and only acted when it became public. Trump shakes his head like a disappointed father, painting the full picture of her negligence. He lists the 78 people indicted, most from her district and community, whom she failed to stop. He closes the blue tab, marking the end of the first scandal. He moves to the red tab, which covers her mysterious millions and personal wealth. MSNBC's correspondent has her head in her hands while the Fox News team grins. Trump asks if she is a millionaire, noting her hesitation as a fatal error. He reminds her she previously stated she was a working mom with student debt. He holds up her 2023 financial disclosure, showing a net worth of less than $250,000. He then holds up her 2024 disclosure, where her net worth jumped to between $6 and $30 million. He lets the number hang in the air, emphasizing the impossibility of such a gain on a congressional salary. Fox News displays the numbers on screen, highlighting the massive discrepancy. Trump asks again if she is a millionaire, noting that one of her forms must be a lie. Omar whispers that her husband's businesses are included, but Trump dismisses that excuse. He details a winery in California that went from being worth $50,000 to $5 million in 1 year. He points out that wineries do not increase in value by 100 times naturally. He cites lawsuits from investors who claim they were defrauded and lost everything. He asks how a failing winery can be worth millions on her disclosure form. Omar has no answer, unable to meet his eyes or the cameras. Trump moves to her husband's venture capital firm, Rose Lake Capital. He reveals court documents showing the firm had only $42 in its bank account in 2024. Yet, on her disclosure form, it is listed as being worth up to $25 million. He asks how $42 becomes $25 million without fraud. The contrast between the court filing and her disclosure is damning and undeniable. Trump suggests she hid illegal money in her husband's businesses to make them look valuable. He believes the money came from fraud, foreign sources, or even terror financing. Fox News shows a graphic comparing the numbers, and the evidence destroys her credibility. He adds that her campaigns paid her husband's companies nearly $3 million. He closes the red tab, summarizing the scandal of her mysterious millions. He checks his watch, noting they have been going for 40 minutes, and says the next parts will be faster. He opens the yellow tab to discuss how she paid her husband millions while having an affair. He introduces Tim Minett, her husband and consultant, and the extensive research his team has done. Campaign finance records show her campaign paid his firm, E Street Group, almost $3 million. This amount is far more than any House campaign should spend on consulting. Trump outlines the timeline, noting they traveled together extensively in 2019. Minett's wife filed for divorce, explicitly naming Omar as the reason for the marriage ending. Trump slams the divorce papers onto the podium, emphasizing the personal nature of the scandal. He highlights that while the affair was happening, her campaign was paying his firm monthly. Payments of $96,000, $147,000, and $203,000 flowed while they were together. He asks if she paid him millions to keep him quiet about the affair. Omar tries to defend the payments as legitimate services, but Trump demands a yes or no. He notes that she cut ties with the firm immediately after the scandal broke, only to marry him months later. Suddenly, his previously broke businesses became worth millions on her financial disclosure. Trump closes the yellow section, calling it money laundering and corruption. He moves on to Ahmed Elmi, the man she married in 2009. Trump reveals education records showing Elmi's father has the same name as Omar's father. He points out that she lived with her current partner and Elmi at the same address. He accuses her of tax fraud for filing jointly with another man while legally married to Elmi. He suggests she married her brother for immigration fraud and refuses to take a DNA test. Trump then addresses her visit to Columbia University during anti-Israel protests. He accuses her of calling Jewish students pro-genocide and spreading hatred. He cites statistics that 78% of American Jews feel less safe due to rhetoric like hers. He asks simply if Israel has a right to exist, and Omar's silence is deafening. He mentions her speech in Somalia, where she called Somalia her home, not America. He questions her opposition to U.S. recognition of Somaliland, claiming she represents Somalia's interests. He reveals Treasury is investigating if fraud money went to al-Shabaab terrorists. He warns that if she facilitated terror funding, it is treason and execution-level crime. 3 hours later, every network is still covering the press conference, and the evidence is overwhelming. By sunset, Democratic leadership abandons her, leaving her to face the allegations alone. Within 24 hours, federal investigations are announced by the Justice Department and IRS. The real story is felt in Minneapolis, where teachers realized the stolen money was meant for their students. 2 weeks later, Omar announces she will not seek re-election, effectively ending her career. Trump holds a follow-up press conference, stating that justice has been served. The swamp is being drained one politician at a time, and the truth has finally been exposed.